And basically what the mayor is telling the president is that Phoenix is on the front lines of fighting climate change and looks forward to working with him to prepare for the future. But there are those critics who are now saying that she and the city council here in Phoenix could have had enough time to prepare for this intense heat wave that we are now seeing, and that they failed in their response.
And even those places that are used to extreme heat have never seen it as hot as it is now for as long as it's been.
President Joe Biden taking new actions to help communities deal with extreme heat. Joining him via satellite, Phoenix Mayor Kate Gallego, who told the commander-in-chief that the record-breaking heat streak is taking a toll.
I've tried to make it my mission to adapt to this trend, to stay ever innovative and ensure we aren't falling behind on heat resilience.
But the mayor's comments were not enough for some of her critics who have been pushing for her to do more.
This has been year after year, has gotten hotter and hotter. This isn't the first year we're talking about this.
Ana Hernandez is a Democratic state senator from Phoenix. She told us that the mayor and the city have had years to prepare, and yet their response has been a failure. To date, the Maricopa County Examiner's Office has confirmed 25 heat-related deaths this year, and another 249 under investigation. Arizona's Family, the first to report that the ME's office is taking this extraordinary move, bringing in 10 refrigerated coolers.
The fact that we are counting on people dying is such a misuse of we should be expecting.
We're told the medical examiner's office is over their standard capacity of 223 bodies and approaching their maximum capacity of 358.
This isn't normal. This cannot be normalized. And instead of like, hey, let's figure out how to save lives, we're responding to the fact that people are gonna die.
And the county does tell me that they prepare for a spike in heat-related deaths every single summer, but this is the first time anyone there can remember bringing in cold storage units to handle extreme heat. The last time the county did this was, of course, during the COVID-19 pandemic.
What did the senator say the mayor and council could have been doing instead?
Yeah, they're talking about preparing, like making, Phoenix much more of a shaded city, providing more shaded things like planting more trees, building more structures to create more shade. And another thing the senator talked about was like dealing with this housing crisis, because a lot of the people, some of the people who are dying from this in this extreme heat are inside. Their ACs maybe were malfunctioning or weren't on, or they didn't have it. But by and large, the senator feels that if there was more effort to provide affordable housing to people, there'd be less people outside in the elements.
Dennis, thank you so much. And it's interesting that the president has got Phoenix on the map with this crisis.